Happy 5 o'clock. It's time for our Wednesday webinar. It's so good to have you back. I'm extremely excited about tonight, and our panel is a pretty exciting group of folks, some of which you'll know. But first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Roper. I am part of the FYMMO team. I'm also the head of teaching and learning here in IADT, which is a new position since September. So, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I miss teaching, but I do some teaching still. But I am so excited to introduce to you Elizabeth O'Brien. Elizabeth is a current postgraduate student here at IADT. She is the FYMMO. She's studying Design for Change, which is a really interesting master's program that I'm sure she's going to make a huge impact in. And she has joined us as the FYMMO researcher. So I'm going to turn you over to Elizabeth and get us kicked off.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So I'm going to give you guys just a little intro into all of our lovely panelists this evening. So firstly, we have Barra O'Connor, a film and television grad from 2020. Actually, all of our panelists are 2020 grads from IADT. So since leaving, Barra has worked in VFX, which I actually had to look up. I don't know much about film and television. So it's visual effects departments across multiple feature films such as The Last Duel and The Silence of Mercy. He majored in editing, which has given him kind of opportunities to work as a freelance editor for companies in Dublin, kind of in production. So I'm sure he'll tell you lots more about which companies and what he was getting up to. And then we have Rachael, who is an applied psychology graduate, and she is actually the current deputy president and education officer in IADT. So Rachael, as part of this role, has run some really amazing campaigns, things such as destigmatizing disability in education, and this campaign was actually awarded Equality Campaign of the Year in 2021 at the Student Achievement Awards, which is a fantastic achievement. And another applied psychology graduate is Georgina, who is just started a new role, but before that she took a little bit of time out after graduating, and now before that, yeah, her major was in psychology and tech. So she's now gotten into that and is working for Accenture in a grad program which focuses on business and technology integration. So she works with client groups to deliver kind of tech-enabled business transformations, which is really interesting. And last but not least, we have Peter, who has a BA in graphic design and put this to many years' use, working as a communication designer for the Irish Farmers Journal. And since then, he came to IADT and studied user experience design, a master's course, a research master's, and is now working in Deloitte as a UX design consultant. So a very interesting story and transition there as well.
That's brilliant. Yeah, there's so much going on in the room because we have two psychology graduates, but what's really interesting is they both took different paths, which is an option in our applied psychology undergraduate program. So they might talk about that at some point. But I kind of wanted to start with Peter because you're working for Deloitte, and Deloitte is often, when I think of Deloitte, I think of accounting. And here you are as a UX developer, and that's the world that you live in, and graphic designer. So how did that come about for you? How did this journey into a different discipline, and yet you're using that which you learned in your education? How can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, most definitely. I suppose when I did the graphic design degree, I think it was 2014, I had a 5-year plan to move on from my current career, and not actively, but just, keeping my ears out and open, listening for opportunities. So when I finished that course, the lecturer there was very good, and she recommended UX as a way of future-proofing myself. So I did a little bit of research and then took a year out from studying because it was quite intensive when you're trying to work full-time as well. and then I learned about the master's course in IADT, read the prospectus and talked to a couple of the lecturers, and then applied. And it was just an amazing course. I threw myself into it. I was absorbed by all the kind of facets of UX, from psychology to user testing and the research, and I loved every minute of it. And it was on that course that a couple of people in there told me about the opportunities in UX, the different companies, which I didn't really understand or I didn't know a lot about. One of the people in the course actually worked for Deloitte, and they referred me. So I think it was, I left it another year, and then during the employment cycle again, it came up again. So I applied, and it was my first interview in 20 years. So very scary. I didn't know what to do, but Dawn actually in the careers team in IADT really helped me prepare for that. So I had 2 interviews, and yeah, I was really lucky to get it. So I'm there 5 weeks now, and I'm thrilled. All signs are brilliant.
That's fantastic. And actually, that's our first shout out to Dawn, but it won't be our last. Dawn, who is part of the FYMMO team as well, but she is our careers officer here in IADT, and an amazing woman in so many ways. She's got a lot of stuff going on at the moment, which we'll be talking about before we leave here. But I want to talk to you a little more, Peter, about the interview process.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? How did you prepare for that?
I prepared by doing some kind of research online and just talking to people. I have a couple of friends and family who are in the recruitment industry, so I got some advice from them. And I think what it came down to was just realizing that this change in my career was quite important, and I was passionate about UX. So I believe that so long as that came across in the interviews, I'd be successful. And if I wasn't successful, then, well, that wasn't a fit, because I did actually apply for other job roles. And I did 2 interviews for another role, and they ultimately said that they weren't proceeding with the application further. And I wasn't too cut up about that or anything, because it didn't fit. I didn't get the right sense about it. But just everything that I'd heard about Deloitte, and in both interviews, that all came across to me, and so I was really pleased when they offered me the role.
That's so important too, because it needs to be a both-way fit, doesn't it? Really, like you
Most
can,
definitely.
and you really don't know that until you get into talking to the people who are actually there, who you're going to be working with in some form. That's what I've found. Like you can look, something looks really good on paper, and then you go in, and just maybe the chemistry isn't right. There's a vibe that you can kind of pick up on, and that's why I think it's important to just keep doing these as much as possible. And I think it's really, I mean, you've got a pretty good hit rate here after 20 years doing one interview and getting the job. I'm sorry, but that's pretty, that's pretty amazing.
Thanks, but I think it was just the preparation. I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to get it wrong. And then actually in there now 5 weeks, what it strikes me is just the authenticity and the sincerity around the company policy, and think that's shining through. So it is as I kind of read on the label.
Fantastic. You've mentioned that you had family in recruitment. Can you share any of their tips that you got?
It was actually my sister-in-law who works for a lecturing college in town, I think, and she is kind of HR recruitment specialist, and she just said, so long as you be yourself, you just speak the truth, and that'll come through.
Yeah.
She just that was the lasting memory I have from talking to her.
That's great, because I do think that we have an authentic self, and we have to be able to be free to share that with prospective career partners, or even business partners, or wherever you're heading in your life. Georgina, you recently, this is a new position for you as well, isn't it? So you're in the graduate program at Accenture. So tell me, I mean, again, what's interesting to me is that we've got a psychology major and we've got a UX, and you're working for what I would call, am I wrong, is Deloitte an accounting firm? Are they accountants? Financial management?
Consultancy and kind of operation transformations, but they would have been traditionally known for accountancy. That's what they started out as. So, right, so I'm in the Deloitte digital team, which is the creative consultant team.
Fantastic. So yourself, Georgina, working in psychology and going into tech, how did you, what brought you to Accenture?
I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. So I initially did the course because way back in the day, I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. And for those who may not be too familiar with the psychology course in IADT, in first year you do a mixture between practical and technical modules. So we're doing quite the straightforward, like, you know, like very traditional psychology stuff, but then you're also doing Photoshop and web applications. And I found that I was actually enjoying the tech modules a lot more than the traditional kind of practice ones. But I didn't think too much of it. I went into the tech path from second year and continued onwards, and then something kind of clicked in third year where I was like, this could actually be a job, but I don't know how to code, and I don't like coding, and I don't want to have to code. But
Sure.
I think I got quite lucky in the sense that Accenture is very good at being like active on campuses, and probably if they hadn't come to IADT like a few years ago, and they still come to this day, I probably wouldn't have known that these kind of jobs exist. Because I think there's still very much this mindset of like, you go into this degree and you're going to be a psychologist at the end. But I think I've definitely done like a 180 in that sense. But it felt like a very natural transition for me from doing those tech modules and kind of going into a technical role, because a lot of it is learning on the job. And I think that's the case for a lot of jobs. I don't know if it was the same for you, Peter, where a lot of what you do, you pick up along the way. And I think it's definitely the soft skills as well. I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't used anything from the psychology modules. It really all just kind of come into play, and especially the presentation skills as well. I think that definitely, it's an underrated skill that you get from this course in particular, just being able to stand out in front of a group of people and speak about anything with confidence.
And that's not an easy skill. It isn't. For a lot of personalities, it can be really difficult to do that. And I think it's good that you have that safe space in IDT to fail, and it's important that we do. And then you build year after year after year so that it's not as daunting. Did either one of you guys had to do a presentation as part of your interview process?
No, not me. We went through my portfolio online, I suppose, because mine's design role as well. Yeah, they had to look through that. Yeah.
My final round of interviews was a presentation. I had to stand in front of like a senior manager and present some sort of technical idea. So I think it definitely came into play for me anyway.
Fantastic. Because I know, Elizabeth, you had to do for this position as a research assistant, she did a short presentation, which was lovely. And it is important to have that little bit up your sleeve. I'd say, Barra, you've got plenty of, well, I don't know, would you have had a lot of experience presenting? You'd be pitching and that sort of thing in IADT, different ideas?
There would have been, for each kind of year's big film that we had to make in the film course, there would have been production packs that would have had to be made and presented in front of lecturers. I kind of got lucky in the sense of I wanted to be an editor when I was in college. So as an editor, you kind of had to do minimal sort of, after first and second year, you kind of had to do minimal work towards a production pack. You might have to do a page and answer 1 or 2 questions, but for the most part, I definitely got away with it. So with sorry.
Because I remember you did get away with it. You're very good.
I did. Yeah, I was very good at getting away with it. But it was just because just the role that I wanted to do and the thing that I wanted to major in is all back end, and it's not really. You can't really present something that you don't really know how it's going to show up. So that's my excuse.
No, and I think it's exactly where you are with that. So you've had a lot of kind of it's a much more fractious career, isn't it? In when you're going into the entertainment industry, the way that you are, it's the same in theater. It's the same kind of in filmmaking. A lot of the creative arts, you're kind of moving from gig to gig to gig to gig to gig, this kind of thing. So tell us a little bit about that experience and how you landed your first gigs, and build on those. Let's not forget, this is all in the middle of COVID as well.
Yes.
I mean,
that's
fantastic.
That's the crazy thing.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you guys have all achieved a lot. Sorry, no, I just wanted to throw out that everybody here has achieved quite a bit during their COVID time, and I think that sometimes a lot of us, it's a difficult time because you guys were interviewing, I'm guessing, online mostly, yeah? Was that, yeah, so was it yourself, Barra, did you ever go in, or was it all online, or how did that process go?
It was all done over Zoom.
Right.
So I got very lucky in the sense that my first gig coming out of college wasn't actually an editing gig at all. It was, well, I did some work for the First Year Matters. I did some editing for the First Year Matters. But the kind of big gig was working as a VFX trainee on The Last Duel. So they were shooting in Ireland for 5 weeks. And Ronan O'Verha, he put me forward, and the VFX supervisor and the production coordinator sent me a Zoom link with a couple of emails back and forth. And I actually wrote down, Peter, what you said, speak the truth, because that was exactly what it was. You're just kind of telling them exactly who you are, what you're doing, your position, and like kind of where you are and things like that. And you don't pretend that you know anything you don't. And I feel like that kind of has pushed me forward, and gotten me jobs, because people know that I'm not messing them about. I'm being kind of upfront with things. So a lot of it, I was very lucky to kind of, through that, it's always a thing of like you have your foot in the door, and then through that you kind of get recommended onto other things, and you kind of move on to other jobs. So through IADT, in a way, I got this big kind of extensive career in all kind of the big feature films that have come into Ireland in the past year. So I've been working pretty flat out through COVID, and then I did some freelance editing in the middle of that when I got a bit quiet as well. I know from another IADT graduate. So that was the great thing about the course, I found, was that people look out for one another, and lecturers will put your name forward if they know you're interested. And even people who you don't really know too well in the years above you will put your name forward for some sort of editing gig. I think we're all quite good in the film course when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny, something you said there, I just wanted to kind of mention, you guys, do you have what in business we would call like the 1-minute pitch kind of thing? Just sort of, how do you get, if someone says to you, tell me about yourself, how do you answer that question in a way? Do you have something prepared? Obviously, it always depends on who's asking, right? Because you want to frame the answer to that question to their interest, if it's an employer or if it's even a possible date. Do you know what I mean? Tell me about yourself can be different depending on who your audience is. Absolutely. But I always recommend to students to kind of consider what you're saying there, Barra and Peter, and I can even hear it with Georgina. There's, figuring out who you are and what you have to offer, what your value is, and then putting the shoe, so you're kind of looking at this company, or you're looking at this person that you want to work with, and it's conveying that information in a way that brings it home. So I kind of always recommend to have sort of a 2-minute, 1.5 minute sort of thing of saying, this is who I am, particularly when you're just kind of, and that's changing, obviously. Every job you get, every experience that you have in your life is going to shape what that answer is. Always thinking of who your audience is, because it always has to be in relation to what they need in an employment situation, maybe even in a personal situation. I don't know, man. It's been a long time. But it's Shag Week. I got to mention this because we'll be talking to Rachel now in a sec. And I was like, I've had so many people say to me, "What's Shag Week?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can tell you that." But I try not to, because no, it's not. It's about sexual health. Yes. So I'm going to go to Rachel. Rachel, you did a different strand in the psychology course. You want to talk a little bit about that and where that led you?
Yeah, no, I did the practice path in applied psychology. So Georgina did tech, so I went down practice. And when I first applied, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I still don't. But I knew that I wanted to be a bit more practical. Like, I really enjoyed the tech modules. I loved using Photoshop in first year and learning that different skill, and it's something that I still use today. Like, not super prevalent, but like, I know color theory and I know these basic things for in IADT SU. It's really helpful to make graphics and things like that, and it's just another skill that I'm gonna have for the rest of my life. But I love the practical modules, and what I really love is learning about people and how to best help others. That's really my kind of thing, and I think that really IADT as a community also fostered into what I'm doing now in the SU, because I had so many great students' union officers to look up to in the past, and they really helped me when I was going through really tough times, like throughout my 4 years here. And I said, wow, that's something I actually might want to do, because I would like to give back to my IADT community, but I also would like to really help people. And so that's kind of why I first ran for the position. And then I found this kind of niche of accessibility and disability awareness and support. That kind of just popped up from some casework that happened at the start of my tenure. And yeah, and that kind of brought into the destigmatizing disabilities in education campaign, being like, a lot of students don't actually know that they have all this support here and to look out for each other, because IADT is such like a welcoming community that I wanted to foster that a bit more, to be like, hey, look out for your peers and your course mates, and there's also this support here for you as well. And now I have this really big interest in universal design for learning and in UDL and accessibility support and things like that. So yeah, so
That's fantastic. And I know this is, sadly, because I must say I have so enjoyed working with you, and will continue to hopefully stay in touch with you as your journey unfolds. But I would say, you know, it's funny because you said, I don't know really what I want to do yet. And I think that's interesting. You know, I don't know how many of you share that. I certainly do. Like I love what I do, but I also am not sure what's next, you know, and I don't think that's a bad thing, frankly. You know, I kind of think sometimes we get scared thinking, I have no idea what I want to do. But then life takes you someplace. Now, some people say, I'm not one of them, but we've had a lot of different webinars here in the FYMMO space. And a lot of people have been talking a lot about goals and setting goals. And I definitely do set goals, but I'm always open if that goal, if there's an opportunity that kind of happens along that path, that I go, oh, okay. But maybe that just means I'm easily distracted. I'm not quite sure. But I don't think we always have goals. Because we're, you know, it's like we're always, there's a, I don't know, maybe if you guys want to chime in on this, it's like you're afraid of making the wrong choice, you know, sometimes. So you don't make any choice. Or you kind of go, well, you know, you be indecisive, ambivalent, or does that resonate with any of you guys?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
spot on.
Okay, tell
There
me
might be a
more.
level of OCD tied to that, you know, or perfectionism maybe.
Yeah.
You don't want to tackle something because you don't want it to fail. You want it to be perfect. So
Yes.
you just put off starting it because you want everything to be correct before you begin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know,
For me, it's so much choice, really. Like there's just so much that interests me that I just don't know what to do, because I've been looking at a couple of master's programs and being like, this one, or do I want to do that, or do I still want to take an academic break, or I could go for this role or this, and I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I like, because I like it all. But I'll like pick something and I'm going to throw myself into it. I know that it's not the end of the world, that I don't know exactly, because I'll figure it out somewhere. And I know what I don't want to do, which is a really good starting point. I know what I'm not going to do.
how did you find out what it is that you don't want to do? Everybody's
Trial
had
and
that.
error.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
Trial and error, definitely.
without taking a chance, trial and error, isn't it? You know, I mean, and we've all, I hope you guys have had the misfortune and the great joy of working in different kinds of jobs that, you know, I used to clean houses, which was such a joke. I am a nightmare. When I was in college, I had about 14 different jobs. I swear to God, it was, I mean, you know, just financially trying to keep up with the demands of college and everything that I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted here, because it's gone nowhere but higher in the 187 years since I went to college, my undergraduate. But I did find it was great taking all these, having these different jobs. I remember being on the top of a frickin' refrigerator in this woman's house, you know, rubbing the ceiling going, this is not going to be my future. And it gave me feelings of like, wow, that's great, because I'm going to college to do something different. I don't know what it is yet. You know, I did my first adventure in higher education. I came out with 2 degrees in one in sociology and one in theater arts, both of which I loved, and I wasn't sure what was next, and I kind of went into theater and sort of stayed with that, and then I was working in marketing. I mean, it's so many transferable skills, but I always remember being on the top of that refrigerator with the smell of that ammonia and the fact that I'm just crap at cleaning anything. And the older woman, who's probably the age that I am now, was looking up at me going, "You're not very good at this, are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right." I'm really not. I'm doing my best though, hon. I'm just not great at it. So I agree with you. It's trial and error. And I kind of wanted to go back to Georgina because you actually took a year out, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. So tell us about that. What did you do during that time, and what was that about?
So I know we can all relate to the utter chaos of graduating in the midst of a pandemic. At the time when it first started, we're talking like March 2020. I was honestly living my best life, completely oblivious to everything. I was like, I have after like college plans, and it's fine. They're gonna go ahead. But apparently, Miss Corona had other plans. So initially, my plan was to. This was on my magical vision board that was set in stone at the time.
Hold on.
I was
Hold on. Is this a real thing? The magical vision board is
no,
actually.
just like in my head, I was like, this is gonna happen. This is
Okay.
gonna
Okay.
happen no matter what.
Yeah.
I was meant to go on a J1 for that summer, and then I had a UX job lined up for when I finished college. But unfortunately, because of everything with COVID, everything just went completely up in the air. So I was like, okay, I don't want to rush into something just because this didn't work out. And I think it kind of ties into what you were saying about not wanting to make the wrong choice. So I was like, if I just go into a job or like further education now, it's not what I actually want. And I will just be doing something for the sake of doing something. And I had actually never taken an academic break before. I went straight from school to college. Like I never took the time to actually just kind of exist, if that makes sense. So I was like, nothing's gonna happen in the next year for me. And that's okay. And I'm happy with that. I'm happy for nothing to happen right now. So I just took a year out, and during that time, I literally just worked part-time in a hardware store, and it was great because I just had like no responsibilities. I didn't have to worry about anything. I literally just relaxed for the year, and it was nice. And I don't regret it.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest with you, the time in the service industry can be really, really interesting because you're right. You get to leave that work there, and like I'm always the kind of person, as I think I know a couple of you guys, I would say this is true. I actually like my work is a lot of my life, and I kind of like it that way. So if I just leave work there, and get on with something else, I'm always thinking about how can I incorporate what I love into my working life so there is, now maybe my work-life balance isn't great. Okay, yes, I have sent emails at 4 o'clock in the morning. Some people here might know. Okay.
I have
But
received them.
well, now I have a little feature where I can have it sent at 8 o'clock the next day, which I'm using and really liking because no one knows that I'm a sleepless in Seattle or whatever. But yeah, no, I think that's a really great thing to be able to just be at ease with yourself for a while can really help you. And then when you were ready to rev back up again, you were ready to rev back up. So in your case, that's great. And did you have to motivate yourself? Because I mean, I found a lot of people in COVID, it's really hard for them to get back on track, because it has been a long holding pattern, hasn't it, in a lot of ways. And it can
Yeah.
be difficult. But for yourself, how did you resilience up and, kind of amp up and get ready to get back into the post-grad, taking a graduate position and getting paid at the same time? Sweet.
Yeah. Always a plus, isn't it? I feel like for me specifically, my personality type is kind of 0 to 100, if that makes sense. So when I was just kind of working and not really thinking about it, I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, this is fine for now. This is grand. But then once it was time to kind of like, okay, buckle down, like what do you want to do now? Like you're like things are going to start back up again. Like, what do you want to do? It literally went from 0 to 100, and I applied for every entry level job, every graduate program under the sun. And I think there was about a 2-month period where my emails were just constantly like, yeah, sorry, you didn't get this one. Thanks for applying anyway. Or like, you're through to the next round, but maybe not the next one, that kind of thing. So it really did kind of go from like, okay, this was a nice rest to, okay, let's go. Like,
Yeah, that's great.
you know what you want to do, like, let's just go.
I just think that's amazing because I think sometimes, again, maybe talking about fear a little bit, is you get those little tiny knockbacks. But if you've put out, say, 40 different things and you get 39 no's, you know what I mean? I remember one of the women we had talking that Grace Latham brought in that we kind of wanted to target, and she did a session for us, which I'd recommend you guys see. It's on our webpage. It's called it's about bravery. And this woman's an author, Marty Waddle is her name, and she had written this book, and she needed to get someone to kind of, endorse it, do the stuff on the back cover saying, I love this book, this kind of thing. So she made a goal for herself to get 50 rejections. And she got 46 rejections. But and then she got, do you know what I mean? Then she got what she wanted. So, because for a lot of students, I know that bounce back that you seem to, which is so cool. You've got that self-regulatory thing. Maybe that's part of even psychology, because I know they work a lot on that, on sort of self-efficacy and self-directing, that you were able to bounce. Whereas I think sometimes in the arts, it's hard to bounce. It's not that it's harder, and it's not to undermine that what you do is amazing. But I think sometimes if you're like an actor, you go in to do an audition, that's you auditioning, and it's very personal. And to get that mindset that you have, Georgina, about, no, it's actually, I'm ready to go, and I'll just keep going until other people join that bus, That's a great way to look at it, because that makes you resilient. And every time we get hit, when we get back up, just get back up, get back up. Having 40, we had all these emails kind of saying, you didn't make this, but thanks for doing it. But you were okay, because like I've got another 50 that I've already done. And I got to bring in Dawn here. Was Dawn helpful with you as well?
And this was actually after I graduated, so I didn't really avail of the services, but.
Okay, well, I would really recommend anyone who's out there now, it doesn't matter what year you're in first year, hook in with this woman. And she sends a careers newsletter every Friday afternoon. And this one in particular, we actually put it up on the FYMMO website. There's a link, because it is just chock-a-block. It's always chock-a-block full of opportunities and different things that are going on that would come through her office. But she's gearing up for the grad, the virtual grad fair. It's virtual, and what's virtual, but we're going to be doing some stuff on campus as well. So if anyone out there is thinking about what am I going to do next year, have a look at this as an opportunity. You can sit in and you can book interviews with employers if you feel you're ready to go to do that, or you just come and meet people, hear them talking about different industries and what's happening in those different industries. That's all happening on March 9th. And I think Elizabeth at the end of this is going to be kind of updating everybody on what's upcoming, because FYMMO has, we're helping with that whole thing, but it's really powered by Dawn and Careers Center, which is part of our student services here in IADT. And I must be honest with you, we'd be lost without the SU. You guys are incredible. And that's why I'm going to miss you next year. I hope there's someone really cool coming up in the ranks, which I'm sure there are, because we have so many cool students, who is going to fill that mantle. But for yourself and Kai, so I know the two of you have to move on, because you've done 2 amazing years in your positions. And we can't thank you for that. And I won't ask you, but I will. What's next, Rachel? So we're not sure, is what I'm hearing.
Still not sure. Yeah, I have a couple of masters that are very similar. They're around like social change and welfare and social justice. So they're both along that kind of theme of accessibility and awareness. So those are 2 that I'm looking at that I haven't like 100% decided on, but those are some things on the table. And other than that, just like similar roles to like what I'm in now. So what I deal with right now is a lot of casework and some admin as well, but like casework is something I quite like as well. Just that process of somebody coming to me with a problem, and I can say, okay, here, let's chill out for a sec. This is what's going on. These are the options that you can do. I can help you with it. Like, this is what you can choose to do. That choice is up to you. Whatever you choose, I'll be there to support you. And that's something I really, really enjoy. So if I'm going into a job, I'm going to do something similar to that. So, but I don't know what it is yet. But that's exciting.
Well, you probably find, things always are evolving. You know, Peter, you made a big choice to go back and do a master's, and your takeaways from that. Obviously, it's led you to the position that you're in currently, to a large extent, but it also, how did it change you as a person? Because I always think it's interesting, the changes that happen when you're a student in IADT. I know it's when you're a student anywhere, but just to kind of look back on that. And I know Elizabeth has a question for you about your former self, so I may let her jump in, because I'm sorry, I've kind of been monopoly. I love speaking to you guys, though. I got to tell you, I think your stories are fantastic. So sorry, Elizabeth, hit it there, Mrs.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose one of the things, you've had an amazing career, Peter, you know, and choosing to go back to college, and even for myself, I took a few years out after my undergrad. Took a lot of time traveling and trying to figure out, you know, what I wanted to do. And there's so many things I realize now that I would say to myself as an undergrad, or even a postgrad who's kind of maybe hasn't taken much time. So much advice that I realize now would have been great. So is there anything in particular you think that you would have loved to have said to yourself, your younger selves? I suppose all of you can maybe mull this question over.
I think specifically around college, it would be reach out to the peers and talk to them earlier. I think my experience of college was a little bit different, maybe because it was part-time in the evenings, but those 20 minutes or so in the canteen before we started and went up to class were hugely important in terms of your fitting back into education and that for a mature student. But just that's where I learned about the job that Deloitte had, because I was speaking to somebody at the table, and sometimes you'd drive over and you'd leave work a little bit earlier, so you'd get to the canteen table a little bit earlier, so you could have a little bit more of that precious time. So definitely reach out to peers. And then with the whole research project, because it just seems like this vast wave of information and that you have to get through and then produce something at the end, I would say remember to break things down into chunks. Just, it's not a marathon. You can't win or finish the marathon in the first kilometer. So just take it 1 kilometer at a time and try and figure out what those smaller tasks are. That's it.
Yeah, great advice. I remember doing my major research project. I'm a scientist background, you know, and I got so stuck into the project that I completely forgot that you graduate and go into a real world. I had no concept of that at all. Forgot that there was a careers officer, forgot that there was people who could point me to internships or point me in the right direction. I went out into the world and I was like, whoa, wow, what? I don't have to look at genetics anymore. And it was kind of overwhelming in a way. I mean, I you know, nothing is linear when you make these decisions, but yeah, I definitely found that the project seemed like the be all end all of that time. But I mean, it wasn't, you know, making connections and using the facilities available in college, which seems to be great facilities in IADT, were really, really important, and I kind of forgot about them. Does anyone else have any insights that they tell their younger selves? For
Or you were going to say something there.
I don't know. It's such a broad question. There's so much that I could say to myself, but I suppose a big thing, while doing my undergrad, I suppose, was to kind of get more experience of the world outside of film in college, because I found jumping out into, like Elizabeth said there, the real world. After college, there's a lot of nuances and a lot of things that I wish I had more experience of, and that were kind of accessible to me while in college, like going out and doing kind of some freelance small bits that I knew people in my course were doing, but I just wasn't paying much attention to because college was my job at the time and I didn't need any other stress, which I also think is a healthy thing to do. But I feel like when you're in college, when you're in my course, you don't just graduate and then go on to a film. You graduate and then you're unemployed for a while, and or you might get some freelance work, and it's kind of good to kind of get a taste of that world, I think, while you're, well, for me anyway, I thought when, you know, I think back on it sometimes in hindsight, and it's like, I think if I had more experience of editing for clients and while in college, kind of having a safe space to kind of see maybe this is what I really want to do and things like that, would have been quite a lot more helpful to me now than it would have been, I think, than I would have thought it would have been.
That's
So
really
that's what I would
interesting.
have said.
Yeah, really interesting. And yourself, Georgina, what advice would you give to your younger self?
It probably sounds a little bit corny, but just stop and smell the roses. I feel like it's very easy to kind of get caught up and be like, okay, this is the next assignment, and then I have to go to work, and then I have to do this, and it's like, just like you were saying, Peter, just sit in the canteen, just go sit in the library, just take it all in, because it really does fly by, and you don't even realize that time is passing as quickly as it is, and then suddenly you're sitting at home and you're like, oh wow, it's over now. So definitely just take a breather. That'd be my advice.
And yourself, Rachel.
Yeah, similar to like kind of what Elizabeth and Peter were saying is breaking down, like when you get to fourth year anyway, your major research project. I struggled with it, and I still have some nightmares sometimes, I won't lie. But making really good use of the services that are available to you, whether it is the careers officer or whether it's your supervisor or some of the other lecturers in your course, or even just your best friend who's in a study group with you, sitting down with them and having a proper chat about either what you're working on or what you're doing in your spare time afterwards. That's so valuable. And I love what Georgina was saying as well about like just taking that step back, because I blinked and I was suddenly in fourth year, and I still was like, I was the first year, wasn't I? Yesterday? Wasn't that me? And now I've been here 6 years, so, and now I actually have to leave, so but yeah, definitely like not waiting until things are a problem. When you start worrying, find someone just to talk to you about it. Even if you think it's a little thing, like, hey, I'm struggling with finding like something like a reference for this, or I'm just having a bit of problem with this. Can you help me? Or can I just chat to you for like 5 minutes about this, because I'm having a bit of a hard time. And then things will turn into like a massive mountain at the end of it, and you'll feel happier, and you'll be able to rest when you go home at the end of the day.
That's actually true, isn't it? Reaching out can make such a big difference, you know? Yeah, really. Anything else to add on that? Because I think that's it's hard to look back. In some ways, it's easy. Hindsight's always 2020. Well, if I only had done this, or maybe if I had done this, or if I had done that. But I also think that you need to kind of say, well, that's where I was then, and this is where I am now. You know, and now I know that maybe it would have been better for me to look around and take that moment and really treasure. But sometimes, like, you're just in the middle of it, you know. And I think people are kind of coming to that point. For most people in the college right now, they've just finished submission of a thesis in fourth year, or they're, you know, whatever, they're getting towards that end of. And the great thing is we're pretty much back on campus to a large extent. So those corridor conversations, which make such a difference and can stick with you. I don't know, but I remember, you know, having corridor conversations with students that I remember to this day that if, you know, that I reflect upon and kind of think, gosh, that was really interesting. We've been denied that for a while. Now that's kind of coming back in, which is lovely. And I know you guys kind of missed that in the last 4 months of your work. Having said that, you've had a different experience. Are you finding it like reemerging from this cocoon? Even though it sounds like you've all been very busy during it, but like, is that transition back into where we are now as a society in Ireland? How is that affecting you, or is it?
It's good to see people again.
Yeah.
I met some people over the week that I haven't seen since that fateful day that we
Wow.
all thought we were going home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, March 12th,
So yeah, right.
2020.
That was a ton of fun. So it's good to be seeing them again and seeing what's going on and hearing that majority of the people are doing quite well. And you know, the time that was in college, you know, you realize just how taken for granted it was, I suppose, at times. The time you spent with people, or you know, just going to the canteen, or you know, going to Baker's or whatever. But it's good to hear that people are kind of keeping to themselves and doing well and everything like that. I don't know if I'm answering your question at all.
No, that it was kind of a meanderer, sort of just kind of
Yeah,
saying, because you guys had two realities of college. You know, you had the kind of lived experience, the traditional being there, and then you also had the online experience of not only college but of life to a large extent. You know, over the last year and a bit, and when you flourish. So the fact that you're doing, say, your interviews and everything is via Zoom or via Teams or whatever, you're not actually meeting the people you're going to be working with until you're hired for a position, say. And actually, Elizabeth and I haven't met in person yet, have we? So we've been working online, and which is so weird. But so I mean, that different way of working, has that impacted? Do you feel as though you actually can get more? There are more possibilities because you're kind of unlocked geographically, or is there? I don't know. Peter's shaking his head there. You having
Oh
thoughts on
no,
this?
I agree. I think at the end of my course, user research and testing was a large part of the research project, and we just couldn't do testing the same way. So luckily enough, it was like a fast forward with these tools, these digital tools, to make sure you can do remote testing. So the majority of our research kind of presentations all said, because of the restrictions, we couldn't do proper testing. So we managed to get remote testing done. That was a large factor. But I think one good thing that I notice now in the job is that I've joined a team of about 30 people, and perhaps if I was in an office, I wouldn't get to chat with everyone. And I think over the first 2 weeks, I chat with everybody. Just you log aside a 15-minute chat, coffee, catch up with these people, and you're kind of encouraged to do this. So I did that, and I don't think that would happen in the same way in an office environment. I mean, even though it's a virtual face, you're still talking to people who maybe you wouldn't have chatted in the same way.
Yeah. Do you have? Are you on site at any time? Are you working remotely? Or what's the
100% remote.
100% remote? Okay. And
Yeah.
yourself, George, is that similar, or are you on site?
It depends on your client. At the moment, I can go in, but I need to put in like an office request beforehand. You can't just like walk in. But I actually kind of prefer working remotely just because I am based in Bray at the moment. So there's a bit more of a work-life balance not having to commute. So it wasn't a huge adjustment, I don't think, working from home in college and working from home.
Yeah, that's
Um,
really interesting.
yeah, I definitely
Yourself,
think.
sorry, do you work from? Do you have a suite, like when you're editing? Are you working? Are you on set? Or you're post production mostly, aren't you? Or
yeah. When I was working on set, I was on set. It was all masks and testing, and I think I've gotten easily over 100 PCR tests done just from being on set. But then when it came to the editing
my
thing,
nose hurts.
yeah, no, it was it's funny how you never get used to it. But I actually prefer going in and getting out because I'm in the corner of my living room. And you don't get that divide, I don't think. I think if I had an office, I wouldn't mind working at home as much, but there's 4 of us here. There's only so much space. So whenever there was a chance to go and work in an office or I worked with Media Coop inside in Harold's Cross. Whenever I worked with them, I went straight in, just because it was easier. You could talk to people in there. You could kind of get a bit of separation from it. It felt normal. So any chance I can, even now I'm doing a couple of edits, I go down to the lexicon and I work down there. Just getting out, I feel like it's very easy to get trapped and feel like your relaxation space is a prison. So getting that kind of work-life divide is, for me, a lot more beneficial to me and my mental health.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think it's different for everybody, and I think the pandemic has shown us sort of, I think we have more versatility than we thought we did in the first instance, right? That we're able to actually exist in a virtual as well as in terms of workspace and also even social space. And a lot of people have a 100% preference for one or the other, and then there's the hybrid. So I mean, the possibilities. But in terms of work, I mean, the future of work, it just means you can be anywhere in the world and still, create a livelihood that is really, really useful. I don't know about yourself, Rachel, because I know you work from home sometimes. You try to be there as much as possible because of your particular job is there to support the students, and when now that they're back, it's good to have you back, obviously, but I'm speaking for you, and I shouldn't be. Forgive me. So tell us your story.
No worries. Yeah, I would be on both sides. I would see the positives and the negatives. So last year I did save quite a lot of money because I wasn't commuting from Wexford, and I also saved a lot of sleep because I wasn't commuting from Wexford every day. But I really love being in the office when I'm with like the rest of the team, because things will just pop into my head that I wouldn't have gotten at home otherwise, and I could do so much more. Or a student could come in to me and be like, hey, do you have like 5 minutes for a really quick chat? I just have a very quick question. Whereas last year I did get quite a bit of casework, but it always was a lot more formal. Students kept referring to me as like Miss Sarsfield Ryan, and I was like, just call me Rachel, it's fine. You don't have to don't do that. Yeah. So it's a lot more formal online, but it also gave me so many opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Like I wouldn't have been as into accessibility and UDL if the pandemic hadn't have happened. I wouldn't have discovered that I really enjoyed that part of my work, of my job, and also that part of psychology as well. That was something new. And then the whole campaign about destigmatizing disabilities, it was something that I had kind of thought about when I was running for my position pre-2020, like in February, but it wasn't as big on my radar. And then I was kind of very gung-ho about it. Then later in the year, I was like, no, I really, really want to do this, and I really want to work on this. And then I made it happen. And hopefully it's something I can leave behind in IADT that will help students when I'm long gone and very far away. But yeah, so I had.
I have plans to keep you here forever, but I shan't disclose.
Okay.
I'm aware that our time is coming to a close, but I kind of wanted everyone to, think about our third and fourth years in IADT, and you've given advice to your younger self. What would you say to them from where you are now? What, just in one sentence, what might you say to them? Think about how, I mean, everyone feeling is in a different stage of where they are, but go on, Ms.
I'm gonna get the ball rolling here, and don't be afraid to make space for new opportunities. That's a lesson I learned very recently, and yeah, changed my format of thinking about things. Don't never I was afraid to leave a part-time job, and until I had something else lined up. Silly. There'll always be, if you create space, you never know what opportunities you're going to get. You can't really predict opportunities, so having space is definitely, yeah, that would be my tip.
That's great. Anyone else?
Don't compare your journey to anyone else's, because that's something I struggled with. So just because somebody else in your course is doing one thing, you just focus on you, and you'll get through it at your own pace. And if you need a hand, you can always come in and see me and say hi, and I'll chat with you as well. I'm here until July. So.
Excellent.
I think a piece of advice I can give, just following on from Rachel's one, is that you don't need to be doing what you studied, I think, straight out the gate. I think it's healthy to get a bit of divide and just like Georgina. And I actually worked in a hardware shop myself for a couple of, worked at Woody's, and getting that divide and separation from what you've been studying for so intensely. Now, if you can get a career in it, great. If you can get something going, then great. But it's also, you know, it's healthy. It's healthy to kind of take a bit of a break as well.
Absolutely. Georgina?
Oh,
Or Peter?
yeah,
Sorry.
probably.
No, Peter. Oh, sorry,
That's
Peter.
That's fine. Probably.
I'll go. No.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I did that on purpose. I
Go
suppose
on.
just to carry on from what we were talking about earlier, and I don't know if somebody else has said this before, but just do a little, a lot. And I think it was Rachel who said, you know, leaving the space, and Elizabeth said it, you know, to kind of think about things. So if you do a little, but do it a lot, then you can have that, you're afforded those times to reflect.
And last but not least, Georgina.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't worry.
It's better be good. We've been waiting on this. It better be good.
Yeah. Oh God, I've really built it up now. The work that you've done so far and the work that you're doing now is more valuable than you think. You might be thinking that like the presentation you did last week, or you know the mock-up website that you did the other day isn't much. It's not really going to stand you, but it actually will. And it is absolutely something that you can talk to employers about. You can talk to anybody about, and they will be impressed.
That's fantastic. Well worth waiting for, Georgina. You did
Yeah.
not disappoint.
Thank you. I'll be here all night.
Well, listen, I'm going to turn us back over to Elizabeth to take us through some of the upcoming events that are happening with the Careers Office and with our Shag Week. Ba-da-ba-ba. I should probably turn you over to Rachel for that. So actually, Rachel, do you want to talk about the rest of Shag Week real quick for the
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. And just in case anybody is confused about what Shag Week stands for, it's Sexual Health Awareness and Guidance.
I said
so
you did.
you said sexual health, you didn't leave the rest of it. But anyway, tomorrow Kai, our Welfare and Equality Officer, is running a sex quiz in Carrigley in CO40 or CO38. One of those two rooms, they're right next to each other, so you can't miss it, and you'll probably hear us anyway, having a bit of a laugh. So that'll be running from 2 to 4, and he's got a bunch of prizes up for grabs, and we'll be posting about it on our social media as well. So just keep an eye out for that as well, and come along and say hi and have fun.
Absolutely, and I think that it's great. The social media is really where to find your Instagram, your Facebook page, and what's going on and where it's happening. And I think it's been a really good success. The Sexual Health and Guidance Awareness and Guidance Week has been super. And I know I'm going to dial it down, Rachel. I'm working hard on this. I just get so excited. We didn't have stuff like this when I was in college, guys. There was no such thing as sex. And and I know you've got RAG Week coming up too very soon, and we've got some FYMMO things. So I'm going to turn you over to Elizabeth, and let me thank our amazing panel tonight for your time, for your generosity, for your openness and authenticity, and sharing your experience with us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank
No
you.
Thanks for
worries.
having me.
Really lovely.
Always.
Yeah. Elizabeth, tell us what's coming up.
So just to close out very quickly, we do have the virtual careers fair on the 9th of March, which is loads of amazing employers, events, and lots of things. Now, in preparation for that, there's a few little things. So on the 28th of February, we have a Going Global event, which is from 1 to 2, and there's free pizza. So you get food and advice about how to find careers and internships kind of anywhere in the world in your discipline, which is actually, I suppose, after COVID and everything, we've all kind of missed traveling. So there might be some really, really cool summer plans that people could find there for jobs and internships. And then at the start of March, on the 2nd of March, we have some interview prep with actual employers. So they're going to do a panel little bit like this, but it's in person, I think, to be announced.
Yeah.
And they'll get to tell you kind of what they look for, their values in interviews, and give you lots of tips. Following that, we have some CV clinics as well. So you can book in with the fantastic Dawn that we were speaking about earlier, and she'll help you not just with your CVs, but with portfolio prep as well, to show employers. So they're taking place on the 4th, 7th, and the 8th of March. And then we have the careers fair, which will be fantastic. It's from 12 to 5 on the 9th. And after all of that madness, we're doing a lovely flow and mindfulness event coming up at the end of March on the 24th, just to take it back and reflect on all the hard work and where we've come and where we're going. So it should be really nice.
Just to get us ready for the final push. So lots is going on, and that's open to all of our graduates as well, any of those events. So please feel free, if you get a break from and you just want to drop in for some free pizza, we'd love to have you. And I know you probably don't have time, but it sure would be great to see you guys back on campus again, because we're back, so that's kind of nice too. Thanks, guys. Before we leave, let me thank the amazing Caroline Healy, who is behind the scenes, our ICT goddess, without whom we would be lost in cyberspace forever. So yes, we'll be back, and I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, take good care. Be kind to yourselves. Take care, guys.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.